Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Rethinking with Alex Torpy. I'm very excited to bring you what I think is going to be a really interesting conversation here today with a newly elected state legislator from Montana, Mallerie Stromswold. Thank you for joining me here today.
Yeah, of course.
So you just got elected, and you're getting sworn in a couple weeks, the beginning of 2021. Talk to us a little bit about your campaign. There's a couple things about it that are really cool and really unique, including that you are in college right now while you're running for office and when you're going to be in session. So talk to us a little bit about, give us a little introduction to your campaign.
Yeah, so I was 17 when I started this process. I was 17 when I made the decision to run for office, um, and kind of did this entire thing while I was in my senior year of high school. Um, I was elected when I was 19. I had to turn 19 5 days ish before election day. So it was really interesting having to balance my last year of high school, being a teenager while running for a public office. And I actually found it quite rewarding and really glad that I did it.
Now, we were just talking a little bit, and you mentioned that you had people were pretty positively receptive to your campaign and your age too. What was that like, kind of going door to door? What were people's reactions? What kind of things were they talking about?
Um, a lot of people were, I actually was really surprised by how um, excited people were for me. I thought it was going to be a lot more negative, a lot more of, you're not old enough to do this. What's your experience? But I think the political climate we are in, people are wanting fresh new people.
Mhm.
And so a lot of the reactions were, I'm glad to have somebody with a fresh perspective that seems to carry herself well. It's all about like how you carry yourself and present yourself. Don't use your age as a crutch, more so as something to bring you up. That is a more positive um, thing for your campaign. So a lot of people, I never really got too much hate for it or criticized for any of it. So that was really inspiring and kind of was the driving force to kind of help me keep going, because people were excited for me, which made me excited for myself, which in return made me work harder. But yeah, I really enjoyed the fact that people were receptive to my age.
And what got you interested in running in the first place?
I was a page, which is basically an assistant in the House during the 2019 session. And I just kind of fell in love with the process. I knew I wanted to be in politics my whole life, but never really planned on staying in Montana in general. But the way it was ran, it just kind of like started something in me. I was like, this is really exciting. I was actually there during a really exciting week too. So um, that was helpful to kind of inspire me to run. But I met some legislators that kind of put the idea in my head to run with it, and so I did. And it's been really interesting.
That's great. And we were talking a little bit too about were making some decisions about where to live, and you knew you wanted to get involved in this way. You knew you wanted to run, it sounds like, and you were trying to figure out where to do that. Walk us through a little bit of what that kind of conversation was like on your, how did you decide to run where you did?
Okay, so when I made the final decision to actually run, it was the summer before my senior year. That's when you start thinking about college and what the next step of your life is going to be. And my whole entire life, I'd seen myself graduating from high school here in Montana, moving out to Pennsylvania, going to Penn State, and starting in politics out there. When this opportunity was brought to me, I struggled with that. Was, do I stay here? I never really thought I would stay in Montana. I never really saw myself staying here. This is where I'm from. But a legislator had said to me, um, whether you, somebody who went to Harvard and got a political science degree would be far behind somebody who went to a community college here in Montana and ran for office. And the fact that I could see myself winning, it kind of sealed the deal for me. So I knew that in the end, winning and becoming an elected official at the age of 19 would be far more beneficial to my education than going to Penn State and then trying to figure out politics from there.
And what sort of things are you learning so far, even just through the campaign?
I mean, policy is something that I was always kind of, I knew a bit about, but you're fully immersed in it, whether you're being taught on a Zoom call for candidates or you're on the door with somebody and they're bringing up an issue that you haven't really thought about. So you go home and research it. How to run a campaign. Most people don't know how to run a campaign, and learning how to run a campaign at such a young age, and not only running it but balancing it with life, high school, job, personal life, all that is a lesson in its own. So yeah.
It definitely is. I remember how difficult it was when I was in office in South Orange. I was in grad school and trying to start a company and on our rescue squad and balancing all those different pieces. I mean, most people out there, who send off an angry email to their, local elected official about an issue don't realize that how much that person might be balancing on their end to
Yeah.
try to do this job.
Yeah, it's a lot to balance, but I think it teaches you a good lesson about organization and planning. So um, it was hard, but I'm really glad I did it. So
It's a trial by fire, right? Because if you have to learn it to be able to successfully get through the campaign, just in itself, not to mention the next couple of years as a legislator.
right, and if you ever decide to campaign again, it just makes the next one a little bit easier. So
Right. That's true. All right. So
so
now, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
So I would love to share a little bit about some of the things that you're excited to work on upcoming. So you've got the session starting in January. You've got a couple ideas that you've been thinking about that you're really interested in, like digging into. Could you share a little bit with us some of the policies that you want to work on and why?
Yeah, so I have 6 bill drafts out there. My top 2 are probably human trafficking and license plate laws. So in Montana, our human trafficking um, per capita rates are extremely high. This has to do a lot with the reservations of missing and murdered Indigenous women and that sort of deal. It's really easy to human traffic in Montana, not only because we have these reservations, but it's also because you can you can drive 10 minutes and be in the middle of nowhere and hit I-90 and be out of the state. And so we see a lot of those issues here. I found this issue to be very pertinent before I even started my campaign. And so I have drafted a bill on human trafficking, and I have some ideas of which way to take it to kind of strengthen our penalties and make it harder to human traffic here in Montana. And so I have a couple ways I can go with that. But then I have a license plate law that would basically um, make it so you don't have to renew your license plates every 5 years here in Montana. You don't have to get a new license plate every time you buy a new car, and you don't have to have a front and a rear license plate. So I think that will be a really exciting venture.
And these are both really important policies that you want to work on here. Are there areas? I mean, are those two areas that when you kind of look at the state currently and the legislature, do you think that they've been that they see those as priorities? Do you think that it's not really been talked about as much as it should be? And how did you
Um,
come to be interested in those two?
yeah, so human trafficking has never really been taken on by anybody younger. I mean, older, sorry, excuse me, anybody older. So Daniel Zolnikov took it on when he was in, and he had some legislation that was pretty good. But I had seen him take that on and knew that he was leaving and somebody else needed to take it on. And I had also seen some poor votes by my opponent before I even decided to run. So that kind of uh, was something that kind of drove me to human trafficking. It's like it was really interesting because those two issues I just mentioned are totally different spectrums. One is
Mhm.
a human service bill, and the other one is a tax and judiciary bill, which would be really interesting because I'm on both those committees. But I just I found human trafficking is an issue that needs to be addressed. It's not controversial. I think everybody wants to
Right.
eradicate human trafficking. And the license plate bill is just something that I just kind of thought of because I had compared it, our state to other states, and thought we can do better. There's no reason our constituents and the people of Montana should be paying so much money for license plates so often. So, yeah.
That's great. And it is interesting because the two of those are both interesting, but such different ways, such different kind of types of problems. And it'll be interesting navigating this too, because, some of these ideas, I'm sure we were talking a little bit about, there are corporate interests or lobbyists that want to keep things certain ways. We'd like to think that, a policy like human trafficking, that there's really nobody on the other side of that, that there's not an interest group that is going to exert pressure on elected officials to not move forward with something there. So hopefully that's something that, if you can get everyone else to pay attention and believe that it's important.
Yeah, there's been some opposition, but it's for different reasons. So, yeah. But we have a lot of spas here that have been known to be hotspots for human trafficking. And there was some legislation created that the massage therapists didn't like because they thought it would hurt the law-abiding spas. And so that's the only opposition you see, but it's never really a issue of humanitarianism, like, oh, human trafficking, so
right.
It's more of like a legislation issue.
And hopefully the legislation can be done in a way that, minimizes those sorts of
impacts. And it has been. So,
right. Yeah. That's great. And so has that been kind of interesting? I mean, it sounds like, political science and policy have been things that have been kind of on your mind for a long time. And now I know, when I remember getting sworn in, and it was like such a, you read about these things in books, but it's not going to happen to me. I'm not going to be able to do one of these things, but that's about to change, and you are about to do those things. And so how are you kind of feeling going into all of that?
I get asked this often, kind of. So I was campaigning I started in the summer of 2019. And so I've been doing this for so long that I don't think it's really real yet. I don't think it'll actually sink in that, wow, I'm an elected official. Like, I actually did this, until the day I get sworn in and session starts actually picking up. So I feel the same. I mean, I was elated when I actually won on election night, but it was just like, okay, yeah. It was kind of like the dog chasing the car, but
right,
the dog caught the car. So
right. Now what? Right.
Yeah. And so I think when it all like sets in and starts going, I will feel that way. So
I think I'm trying to think back to some of my moments there, and I think it really turned, like when, the hand is on the Bible and the room full of people, and it's like, oh, this is happening. This isn't a dream. This is happening. All these people are here to watch you, ascend to this position that, I mean, it's amazing that we live in a country that we have plenty of problems with the way politics works in this country, but it's amazing that people from the outside who are interested in changing things and interested in doing things and not interested in, building power for just the sake of it, like that we actually, to some degree, can access this system.
Yeah. It's especially as a 19-year-old right out of high school.
It's incredible.
Yeah. It's definitely a euphoric feeling for sure.
And now, when you were saying a little bit, let's talk, reverse a little to some of your time on the campaign itself. What would you say, as you were getting that going, you mentioned that getting things started felt like that was like a big challenge. What was that challenge like, and what sort of things did you do so that you could like get things set up on off to the right start?
Yeah, I had a few legislators helping me, and I'm not one for planning in large spaces of time. So they told me I had to do a 6-month plan, what my next 6 months are going to look like. That was very hard because you have, especially as somebody who's new to campaigning, I have no idea what a campaign is supposed to look like. And so they helped me with that list, and having actual dates when you need to finish all of these things and these goals was really helpful. But there's just like a few tedious things you have to do before you can even uh, start the campaigning process. So the first thing I did actually was create a website and create a donor box so that I could get donations and fundraise, because that's the next thing you need to start doing is fundraising early, because when you actually start campaigning and knocking doors and designing literature and doing lit drops, you do not have time to worry about writing letters and calling people. So if you start off with your campaign with fundraising before any of that starts, your stress level will go down immensely. I was really glad that I had a large amount of my fundraising done before I started door knocking.
That's great. Some really, really good tips in there. And for those of you that might be watching or listening, hopefully you've watched some of the episodes in the full series on how to run for office. And we've go into some of the detail about some of the things, Mallorie, that you just talked about. I mean, planning at this stage is important to be able to kind of think about where the campaign needs to go over the next couple of months and what activities you need to be doing. If you need to hire people or find more volunteers, and what your target numbers are for your voter outreach. And what I also heard from you is that having a support network around you for the process was really
I was just
important.
about to say that. Yeah, I think that was the most important, the like best thing I could have done was connect myself with a legislator I was comfortable with, and was younger, which was nice because they could relate to me a little bit, who had ran at a younger age. And then he connected me with other people, and it was actually some older people who ended up being really seasoned in campaigning. So having a balance of mentors and what they can bring and help you with, because if you're willing to work, they're willing to help you. Find those people. I think that is the main attribute to my campaign that helped me win by far. So
Yeah, that's great. It's great advice. I mean, sometimes it can feel like, I think for those of us who really want to, a lot of people who end up running for office were sort of like really independent, spirited people, often who start their own companies or kind of do their own things in that regard. But it's helpful to remember that even for those of us who are ambitious in that we want to work really, we're willing to put in the work to get the things done and all of that, that there's no one is like capable of doing this on their own. It is just not possible. No matter how like self-sufficient you think you are, it's just not possible.
Yeah, you cannot be afraid to ask for help. I'm very independent. I don't like relying on people or asking for help all that much, but they are there for that reason, and they want to help you if you're willing to listen and take the advice. I definitely you don't have to take all of it, because it's your campaign at the end of the day, and how you are perceived by voters is your problem and your responsibility. So but it's nice to get that information, tweak it how you feel is most beneficial for your campaign, or just take it verbatim. So
yeah, that's great. And it's really important to find people that you can trust for that. So those all sounded like those were important elements of getting the campaign off the ground, getting a website up early so that you can direct people to a place where they can contribute. Also a really great advice. That is, we talked a little bit about, I remember when I ran, there was, I used to carry around one of those credit card readers that you could plug into your phone to swipe credit cards on. I would take the train in and out of New York, and I would see friends from high school, and they'd be like, "Oh, I saw you were running for mayor. That's so cool." They start taking cash out. I'm like, I know what you think about. I don't want to do it that way. Like, we can't do that. We can't make New Jersey's reputation of money changing hands in politics worse. They're like, well, I have a credit card. I said, well, no problem. Let's just swipe that and go. And being able to get a little bit of money like that early on really can make a big difference, as you mentioned.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And no donation is too small. It all adds up. So whether it's a max donation or minimum donation, take what you can and never be afraid to ask for money. That was one of the hardest parts for me, was asking for money. But you get used to it, and it feels good when people say yes. So the worst they can say is no.
That's very true. That's very true. That's a good point. Well, this has all been some interesting insight into your campaign, some of the things that you want to work on. Is there anything that you wanted to share, anything that we didn't like touch on here that you wanted to tell people about? Anybody who might be, thinking about running for office?
Just think about it for a while and weigh the pros and cons. I mean, you'll learn so much from running, and if and when you win, it's all worth it. And you might sacrifice some things, but it's a great experience. So I would do it if you're considering it. If the pros outweigh the cons, for sure.
That's right. And it is worth, it is worth reflecting on that. You mentioned this earlier, and it's something that I've talked a lot about in the series as well, which is there's a lot of kind of thinking required before you decide to do this. It's a really big decision, and this is not the kind of thing that you can sort of half decide to do and then half do it. You've got to file the paperwork, you've got to get the petition signed, and once you start crossing those lines, you're kind of committed.
Right, and if you're going to do it, do it. Yeah. If you're going to do it, run the campaign. Don't just rely on other people to run it for you, or think that you can just kind of skate by. Run the campaign so that you feel good about winning, and that you ran a really good campaign and can continue to run well done campaigns in the future.
And so would you say you were pretty active kind of setting the direction and managing the campaign as you went?
Yeah, I definitely had a lot of help, but what I was told a lot was we wouldn't keep helping you if you weren't working as hard as you were. I heard from a lot of people, and it's really good to hear when you're being told like you're working really hard, you're doing everything you should be doing, you're doing it right. And so I was really active in my campaign. Between comparing to other people who were campaigning, I was definitely told that I was out a lot, door knocking, and how prepared I was, how much I had fundraised, and just how much I was doing. So I was very active in it. I did a lot of work, but it paid off. So
that's great. Well, I'm sure you'll do the same in the legislature once you all start getting going in January.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again for sharing a little bit about your experience and some ideas there. I think I'm sure I join others in saying I'm excited to see some of the things that you get to work on and what you get to accomplish when you're in office. That should be really fun for us to all get to see.
Yeah.
So good luck with that, and thanks again for joining and talking to us a little bit about your experience.
Yeah, thank you.